Okay, so let's dive into the source material we've got lined up. Looks like excerpts from a YouTube video.
That's right. It's centered on immigration enforcement, ICE, border security.
Yeah.
Different views on crime related to it.
Got it. And our goal here, just to be clear for everyone listening, is to really unpack the claims and examples just from this material, right? Understand the points being made, why the source thinks they're important.
Exactly. No outside info, just what's presented here.
Okay, so where does the source kick things off? What's the opening angle?
Well, it jumps right in with a pretty strong focus on the challenges ICE agents apparently face.
Challenges like what?
And it connects that immediately to sort of political talk. The claim presented is that vilifying ICE agents fuels hate.
Okay.
And that hate, according to the source, could lead to really dangerous situations. Agents potentially having to, well, take a life or even lose their own.
Wow, that's quite an intense starting point. How does the source try to show that those dangers?
He gives a few examples. It mentions agents being doxxed.
Doxed, like personal information leaked.
Yeah, pictures, phone numbers, apparently put up on telephone poles, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
It also talks about people supposedly following agents, filming them going home at night.
Hmm.
And there's a specific mention of a protest targeting one agent's actual home.
So the framing in the source is that this isn't just, a job hazard, it's personal, affecting their private lives.
Exactly that. It paints a picture of ICE agents being, like, constantly watched while they're trying to handle what the source calls significant public safety and national security threats.
Often late at night, you said.
Yeah, working late, early mornings,
Yeah.
basically when most people are asleep. The perspective pushed is that these agents are putting their lives on the line.
And that, according to the source, they don't deserve the negativity and the threats.
Precisely. That's the core argument there.
Okay. And where does the discussion go from there? Does it shift towards policy?
It does. It pivots pretty quickly to comparing different administrations, specifically contrasting the Trump and Biden eras on border security effectiveness
Hmm.
as the source sees it.
Right. And what's the main claim the source is making in that comparison?
The central argument presented is that under President Trump, ICE managed to achieve what the source flat out calls the most secure border.
Most secure border. Okay. Does it offer anything to back that up? Any specifics?
It cites some metrics from that period. The source claims fentanyl trafficking was down over 50%.
50%. And it links that reduction directly to saving lives.
Yes, from overdose deaths specifically.
Yeah.
It also claims that sex trafficking, particularly of women and children, was also down significantly during that time.
And I think I recall seeing something about migrant deaths, too.
That's right. The source argues that fewer migrant deaths happened because, supposedly, fewer people attempted the dangerous journey in the first place.
So if we tie this all together, the source connects these numbers, these alleged successes under the Trump administration, straight back to the work of ICE agents.
Yeah, pretty much. It portrays them as, saving lives daily
Yeah.
based on these figures. And it asserts that most people ICE arrested then were, quote, criminal illegal aliens and public safety threats.
Which I guess leads into that very pointed phrase the source uses. Something about the world is upside down.
Ah, yes. That line.
What's the point being made there, according to the source?
Well, the source uses that phrase to argue that the public conversation, or at least how the source perceives it, is just fundamentally wrong.
Wrong how?
It suggests this kind of distortion of justice where law enforcement, the ones with badges and guns, are made out to be the bad guys.
While people breaking laws are presented as victims.
Exactly. That's the inversion the source is highlighting. It's really central to how this material frames the whole political debate around immigration enforcement.
That's a very clear political viewpoint coming through in the source material. And it uses this framing to make a direct accusation about the current administration, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The source basically says that the success it attributes to the Trump era proves the Biden administration lied.
Lied. And that they're ruining their plans. That's strong language indeed.
Largely strong.
What plans does the source claim are being ruined?
The assertion made in the source is that the plan, attributed to the left, was to deliberately delay court hearings for millions of people.
Delay them for how long?
5 to 10 years, the source claims.
Mm-hmm.
And, crucially, not detain them during that time.
Okay. And what was the alleged reasoning behind that, according to the source?
The source claims the thinking was that by the time they finally got to court, there'd be a Democratic administration that would just grant them amnesty.
Turning them into future Democratic voters. Is that the explicit claim?
That's the explicit claim made in the source, yes.
Yeah.
And it says ICE's current actions are effectively stopping the supposed political strategy.
How does the source back that specific claim up about this alleged political plan? Does it offer evidence?
It's presented more as an assertion, really. It connects the different enforcement styles and basically interprets ICE's ongoing actions, even with perceived pushback, as the thing disrupting the plan. It doesn't point to, say, leaked emails or documents. It's framed as the source's reading of the situation and the motivations involved.
Okay, so presented as an interpretation of political strategy. Now, the source also uses specific cases, anecdotes, to kind of hammer home its points, right? Which ones does it bring up?
It does. It highlights a particularly horrific murder case out of South Carolina, Larisha Thompson, a mother of 2.
And what are the details presented about that?
The source says she was allegedly killed by 6 individuals it identifies as illegals, 3 adults, 3 teens, aged 13 to 21.
And what else does the source include about the case? Any claims from law enforcement?
It mentions the sheriff involved claiming none of the suspects were legally in the country. It also adds these details about the suspects supposedly breaking into a store a couple of days before and texting about the murder afterwards, using phrases like mission fail and just the beginning. Pretty chilling details presented there.
Definitely. And what's the broader point the source uses this tragic example to make?
It's used essentially as a warning. The source argues that these kinds of murders, allegedly by people here illegally, are going to increase because, according to the source, Democrats are making deportation harder.
So the conclusion drawn in the source is
that millions need deporting, not just the tens of thousands it says are currently being removed. It directly links the alleged difficulty in deportation to future violent crime.
okay, this is where it gets really interesting, though, because right after that horrific example, the source brings up a totally different kind of case, doesn't it? The Solomon family in Colorado.
Yes, that's a fascinating contrast they present. It involves Mohammed Solomon, identified by the source as a suspected felon on an overstayed visa.
And what was he allegedly doing?
According to the source, he tried to infiltrate groups protesting for hostage releases.
Okay. And what happened then, according to the material?
His family was then detained by ICE, visas revoked, deportation seemed imminent.
And the source presents that move, detaining the family, as the right call. Obvious and correct, I think was the phrase used.
Yes, that's how the source initially frames it.
Yeah.
But then it introduces a counter perspective.
Right. From whom?
It quotes Andrew McCabe, or refers to his viewpoint anyway.
Okay, and what was McCabe's perspective as presented in the source?
According to the source, McCabe suggested that, well, if you have a family that might be cooperating, giving information about an attacker,
You might want to work with them.
yeah, maybe work with them before immediately putting them in custody. That's the alternative view presented.
And the rationale for that, according to this opposing view in the source, why not detain immediately?
Because, according to that view, locking them up could mean you lose their cooperation. You might lose information you need for the trial down the line.
So deal with the immigration status later, prioritize the criminal investigation now? Is that the gist?
That seems to be the gist of the alternative perspective presented in the source. Yes, their status could be sorted out later.
This really highlights a clash, doesn't it, based on how the source lays it out? Different priorities clashing, immediate immigration enforcement versus potentially longer-term criminal investigation needs.
Absolutely. And the source makes that clash very clear because it immediately pushes back against McCabe's viewpoint.
How so?
It states, very directly, that ICE agents swore an oath to enforce the laws passed and funded by Congress. The argument is that's what they're doing. They're not just, making up rules.
So the source's position is pretty blunt then. If you're in the country illegally, you've got a problem. ICE is looking for you.
Yes. And while they might prioritize the bad guy, as the source puts it, that doesn't mean the other guy, presumably someone here illegally but not accused of other crimes, is off the table.
And the justification given in the source is that they're enforcing immigration laws because...
Because the source claims that's what the American people voted for and what President Trump promised to do.
And it goes on to claim President Trump's record on this is unprecedented.
Compared to 6 previous presidents, yes, that's the claim. It expresses a sense of pride in working to, and I'm quoting the source here, making the country safe again, one illegal alien at a time.
So, despite any criticism, what the source calls hate, the message is we're doing the job, we won't be stopped.
That's the defiant stance presented, absolutely.
What's the final thought the source leaves us with? How does it wrap up its perspective?
It circles back to that core tension it sees, the claim that some people, quote, lionize the illegals and vilify ICE.
Right. That brings it full circle to the initial point about vilification.
Exactly. It encapsulates the central conflict as this source material frames it.
Wow. Okay. We've certainly unpacked quite a bit just from this source material. We've gone from the claims about dangers faced by ICE agents
To the source's specific take on border security effectiveness under Trump versus Biden.
the really graphic, tragic example of LaRish Thompson's murder used to make a point about deportation.
And then that contrasting case of the Solomon family, bringing up those different views from within the source itself about how enforcement should even happen moment to moment.
It really does lay out some conflicting ideas, even within its own presentation.
Which brings us to a really interesting question for you, the listener, to think about, based purely on what we've discussed from this source material.
Okay, what's the question?
Well, if, as this source claims, success in immigration enforcement is measured by things like, say, less trafficking, less crime, what are the implications of these, well, seemingly contradictory views that the source itself brings up on the best way to actually achieve that success?
And who benefits or maybe loses, depending on which approach is taken, again, just based on the dynamics described right here in the source?
Exactly. Something to consider.